This is TechCrunch. Solo VC investor extraordinaire Elad Gil said on stage at TechCrunch Disrupt 2025 that AI has been one of the least predictable tech booms he's ever seen. Gil is on the cap table of virtually every hit company of the past decade, including many of today's leading AI companies. Still, he thinks that over the last year, certain AI markets appear to be nearly sewn up by market leaders. Beyond those areas, a vast swath of AI remains anyone's game. He said, I started investing in generative AI in 2021. At the time, not very many people were paying that much attention to it. But he had seen the massive leap in capability between GPT-2, launched in 2019, and GPT-3, launched in 2021. The step between 2 and 3, he said, was so large that if you just extrapolated only the scaling laws or the curve, then you could really assume that this was going to be incredibly important. That convinced him to start backing early-stage startups building products powered by large language models. His bets included both foundational model makers like OpenAI and Mistral, as well as application companies like Perplexity, Harvey, Character.ai, Decagon, and Abridge. Yet, throughout last year and much of this year, the capabilities of foundational models leaped with every release, upending AI every few months. He said, I used to say at the time that AI was the one market where the more I learn, the less I know. Usually, the more you learn about something, the better you know it, right? The easier you can predict the future, etc. But AI was just hazy. There's just too much uncertainty. And I think there's still markets like that in AI. However, he's also now seeing markets with clear winners. The most obvious example is with foundational models themselves. Even though hundreds of models exist, and some countries like South Korea are still working to develop sovereign models by local companies, leaders have emerged. He predicts that Google, Anthropic, OpenAI, maybe xAI, maybe Meta, maybe Mistral, it's like a handful, he said, will be the winners. After models, he thinks AI-assisted coding has runaway winners that will make it hard for new entrants to catch up. Not only have the foundational model makers moved in, Anthropic with Claude Code, OpenAI with Codex, but also startup leaders like AnySphere's Cursor and Cognition's Devon, which acquired Windsurf, will be hard to beat. And there are well-funded startups like Magic, which Gil called a possible outlier, and Poolside on their tails. He sees medical transcription as being cornered, with Abridge a frontrunner and a handful of others like Ambiance being important. He names customer support, which was an early target of both traditional AI and the new crop of AI agent startups, as having hard-to-catch market leaders, such as his portfolio company Decagon. It raised $131 million at a $1.5 billion valuation in June. OpenAI chairman Brett Taylor's startup Sierra competes in this space. This is also an area where the incumbents like Salesforce, HubSpot, and many others are adding AI offerings. So, which markets seem wide open? Well, Gil says financial tooling, fintech, accounting, AI security, and other markets that we know are by default very interesting. We just don't know who's going to do it. Ironically, fast growth is not the signal it once was that a company is going to be a breakout hit. Gil said the CEOs of every big company are basically telling their teams, hey, we have an edict. We need to figure out our AI strategy. These giant enterprises are willing to try things that 2 years ago they never would have tried. And it's only because of AI. So new AI markets can land a lot of revenue from big-name enterprise customers quickly, but that doesn't mean they're going to stick. It is only after a market goes through its trial phase boom cycle that a startup and investors can see if this revenue will stay and grow. Gil said there is a false signal, and then there's stuff that is just working. He calls out legal AI startup Harvey as one of the market leaders that's just working. It raised 3 massive rounds this year, leaping from a $3 billion valuation to $5 billion to $8 billion in just a few months. Locket, a private social networking app for friends, has scored a win with Gen Alpha users following the launch of its latest feature, Roll Call. The app, which lets friends share photos that then appear in home screen widgets, first hit the top of the App Store's charts in early 2022 by taking advantage of Apple's widget system to form the basis of its social network. Instead of updates sent via push notifications, the app's widget would update to show your friends' newly posted photos. This, in turn, would drive engagement back in the app, prompting users to share their own photos in return. CEO Matt Moss explained that Locket's roll call feature takes a similar approach by turning Apple platform features into social networking tools. A former Apple Worldwide Developers Conference student scholarship winner, Moss understands that new formats can help attract users and draw people in. Roll Call prompts users to share their favorite photos from the past week, and it leverages an iOS feature called Live Activities. This allows the app to utilize the iPhone lock screen to capture users' attention. Introduced in iOS 18, Live Activities allow iOS apps to offer frequent information updates in glanceable locations like the lock screen and dynamic island. Apple originally envisioned Live Activities as a way for apps with real-time information to update their users. For instance, with information about their Uber arriving or pizza delivery. However, some apps have used the technology in unique ways, like adding a virtual pet that frolics in the dynamic island or displaying the real-time lyrics for the song you're listening to right on your lock screen. For Locket, however, Live Activities becomes the modern-day version of the push notification. Moss said, "Every Sunday we'll take over your lock screen and you'll get this nice live activity that pops up right on the homepage of the iPhone. It's similar to the widget, as it's using Apple technology to get in front of people and then let you share those moments that you wouldn't have shared." The use of the technology in this way has already proved successful for Locket, which has north of 91 million lifetime installs across iOS and Android, per App Figures estimates. The company said in Roll Call's first week, Locket saw over 1 million shares driven by the feature. In addition, Moss said that well over 25% of the app's active users are now posting a roll call every week. He said, "The live activity pulls people in a lot more, and it's fun because as your friends are sharing, they'll feel like we're all doing this together." Roughly 80% of Roll Call's initial active users were classified as Gen Alpha. The founder noted there are some differences between how Gen Alpha and Gen Z use Locket. With Roll Call gaining traction out of the gate, the company is now exploring how to use the feature as a launching pad for other experiences beyond photos. For instance, Moss says adding video support is an obvious next step, but he's also thinking about how to incorporate things like music, favorite places you visited, or prompts designed to help you remember things that happened during the week. While Locket does not have plans to support AI-generated photos or videos like Sora or Meta AI, the company is considering how AI could be used in other ways, like making collages or pulling together photo memories. The company is also thinking about how Locket can transform users' virtual connections with friends into more real-world touchpoints, even if it's something as simple as reminding users to call or text a friend. Locket today monetizes via a subscription and says it has more than 100,000 subscribers. As a result, the 15-person company has been profitable since last year. That's it from TechCrunch. For more stories like these, go to TechCrunch.com.